Alrighty, I think it's happening. We are live. Um, yeah, sweet. So I'm Dalton Johnson, and I've been a photographer for the last decade, photographing for everything from big campaigns for like Ford Bronco, all of those things, Rivian, Nike, all sorts of brands. Um, I wanted to essentially try to start creating just like a really simple, I hop on here and kind of share information about photography, what I know, what I've learned over the last decade, and just share as much as I possibly can. So essentially, today, what we're going to do is cover everything about outreach. So I kind of have it titled like "Why Most Photographers Quit Too Early on Outreach." If there's a resource down below, if that's helpful for you, it's totally free. You can do that and read through it. It'll be super helpful. I'm using a case study about how I landed Oru Kayak after essentially almost 18 months of kind of pitching them on ideas and it taking about 18 months of like cold pitching to like landing them as a client. So that's kind of key. If anybody has any questions, drop it in the comments below, and I'm or the chat, and I'm happy to help you all out. So let's go ahead and get started. There's kind of going to be four parts to this. So the four parts are the timeline most photographers expect versus what's actually happening. Silence is not the answer you think it is. What quitting too early actually costs you as a photographer, and how to stay in it, like stay in the game when nothing is happening. So let's go ahead and hop into the first one. The timeline most photographers expect versus what's actually happening. So pretty much no matter who you interact with or like what brands you kind of interact with, the biggest key that you'll kind of notice is that when you reach out, you just get ghosted. Almost never do you get a response. I've been in a like I said, I've been in this for over a decade, and honestly, I still get ghosted pretty much every cold outreach. And so the thing that you need to realize is like it's not the first touch or even the 10th touch or sometimes even the 30th touch that you're like reaching out to these brands. It what's happening behind the scenes is you're sending out this pitch. Maybe your pitch is like an actual pitch, or maybe it's just like a sharing work or doing something to get on that company's radar. Either company or agency, production house, all of those are great places to start pitching. But the key is to kind of realize like, oh, every time you're reaching out, it's just staying top of mind because brands, agencies, production house, they don't have a job that fits you, right away. And also, they have tons of photographers in front of you that you kinda have to prove your self-worth in front of them. And so, using the case study of Oru Kayaks, um, I pitched them a pretty cool story idea of, like, road tripping, like, showcasing their product. For those of you that don't know, Oru Kayak is like a foldable kayak. It's like origami, and so you can essentially squish it all together and then take it on a road trip somewhere. I pitched them this road trip through Lake Tahoe and up and down Highway 395, all in California, using a van. Um, and the original pitch, once I got through to the correct person, they were like, "Oh, we love this. However, on the flip side, um, we don't have any products that we need to photograph right now." And so there's a lot about like time and place of you have to be in the right time in the right place sending the correct email, and so that's why a lot of it's just a numbers game. And so essentially, when I'm kinda looking at, like, what's actually happening behind the scenes, most brands only do, like, maybe 1, 2, max 3, like, big shoots a year, and those would be, like, seasonal drops. Brands do a lot of, like, smaller shoots, but those smaller shoots, they pay, a couple grand, but they're essentially geared towards social, they're more reactive. This isn't like the big budgets, like building something out, it's, like, more on the, like, advertorial, editorial kind of side of things, And so essentially that's what those are. Um, I think some of the cool things that you can kind of realize is like you can pitch a lot of brands very easily if you're in the outdoor space or kind of like the adventure space. Once you kind of start moving beyond there, social media is probably a good way to enter the market, but it's going to be hard to turn it into like a paid job. And so that's where you move it to email, and then you'll be constantly reaching out. I try to reach out about every 2 weeks, and from there, that's how every 2 weeks to once a month to let people know of like what I did or what I've been doing, to also like pitching ideas that I have. And so that's kind of that. What I would say is what's actually happening is brands are kinda they're sitting there, they're thinking about how they're going to release their next product, and so, they're really kind of figuring out how and who and why and where to utilize a photographer, videographer, something of that sort, and so that's where your pitching has to kind of be timely, and so it's better to just get on the radar of somebody and continually follow up and just keep them informed and knowing who you are, because at that point, you can definitely move forward, because they might put you in they're like, a brand will be like, "Hey, we don't need you right now." Like, literally, they just don't have a shoot, or, like, an agency doesn't have a shoot coming up, And so what they're trying to do is figure out who to use when the time comes. And so that might be a year down the road. And to use the back to the case study of Oro Kayaks, it took 18 months, from when I was reaching out to when they actually had a potential job. I ended up landing the job, but sometimes, you get put in for the potential job, like a RFP or something like that, to where you pitch them, they like the idea, you go, and then you don't land the job. That's always the unfortunate one, but it does happen. And so, a lot you have to, like, think about, like, that seasonality, like, when is the brand dropping new products, and then probably work back about 6 months, maybe even a full year from where that drop would be to create the assets and then move forward. And so that's kind of the actual timeline is about 12 months to 18 months, but most photographers kind of expect, like, to get a job, like, after a couple messages. And so that's, like, one big thing to kinda realize. The next, talking point is kind of, like, about silence. It's very popular in our industry to get, just get ghosted. Uh, essentially, just like brands often just have their inbound is just bombarded with ideas, bombarded with people being like, "I'm a great photographer. Work with me, pay me money." And so there a lot of the brands just like they can't while it's their job to find photographers, they usually have a handful of photographers they like to work with. Yes, they do need to discover new talent, and you can make their job easier by literally just being like, "Hey, I exist. Here's my work. I'm really good, and here's why. I noticed that you don't cover, in water photography, but your product would look great, like in being used in water, or like whatever your like kind of niche specialty is. That's like you can hone in on that and explain to them how and why they should hire you to make it easy for them to see why their product could be used for what you're doing. And so that's pretty big. But often you send all those emails and you just get silence, and you follow up and you still get silence. And so that's where as a creative, it's really hard and kind of demoralizing. So just realize like for the most part, they're probably opening your email. They're probably opening it and skimming it, but then that's about it. So just know that you kind of have to keep doing it over and over and over again, and then they'll start to realize who you are, start to recognize your email name, and be like, "Oh, cool, got another email from Dalton. It's gonna have some pretty photos, and it's gonna have a pitch of an idea. I always like what he does, and blah blah blah." And so that's kind of there. So if you're getting silence, just realize for the most part, it's just they probably don't have anything, and most brand marketers aren't like, "Hey, thanks for the pitch. No, we don't have anything for you right now." They're just like, "Open, cool, delete. Open, cool, delete," instead of responding. While it would be cool if they responded, they're probably not going to. So the next topic within this is kind of like what quitting too early actually costs. And so I've been photographing for over a decade at this point. I've like grown a newsletter up to about 33,000, but I pretty much keep a list of roughly about 300 potential clients or past clients that, I consistently talk to, and that contact list of roughly 300, it comes and goes. It may go down into the 200s, it might go up to the 400s, it just depends on who I'm trying to talk to and, like, what concepts I'm trying to pitch, what work I'm trying to land, and so, the thing to realize with that is, I would say I pretty much only do about 20 projects a year. And so when you're really thinking about that, you're like, okay, I'm pitching about 300 people or like keeping 300 people in the loop. Um, and I'm only landing about 20 jobs a year. And so you really kind of think about that, like where that falls in line. And so, I mean, that's like less than a 1 in 10 kind of deal. I'd say most people kind of stay on that list for about 3 years unless they turn into like, if I go like 3 years without ever receiving a response, like I'm not going to talk to those people anymore because that outreach is just not working. But yeah, I think measuring and tracking your outreach on at least a 3 year timeline is good. 18 months, I would say, would be the quickest. I would toss somebody off of a outbound list that I've created. But yeah, I mean, if you're kind of churning like 6 months, 3 months, and you're like, I'm not getting a response, you're quitting way too early, and the actual cost of that is quite substantial because now you're switching niches, and it takes a lot of time and effort to actually get somebody to know who you are. And so that's like a big thing. Um, all right. How to stay in it when nothing is happening. This is like the hardest thing. Yeah. So when nothing is literally happening and you're just constantly, I don't, when you're just pitching idea, pitching idea, pitching idea, and it's a slow season, it kind of hurts. Like internally, as a creative, as a photographer, as a director, you feel like, oh man, nothing's happening. This is all terrible and this isn't worthwhile. The thing to kind of realize is that what might actually be best to do um, is to A, look at your system, and then B, maybe increase your outreach. And that's like increase can go in two ways, right? You can either increase the amount of people on your list or increase the frequency of reaching out. If you're already reaching out within every 2 to 3 weeks, more than that, you're just pure spam. Don't do it. But if it's increasing the size of your list, that's always good. I would say don't really go above 500 people. It's hard to just stay in contact with 500 people. I think the 200 to 300 is kind of the sweet spot because you can just track it, kind of like be like, hey, this is information about these people. This is the last bits that we talked about. All of that AI will definitely help you out in the future, being able to track all of those things. But you could start today with an Excel spreadsheet, and so I think that's there. The other thing to do is actually, like, just come up with cool concepts and shoot spec work. That's like spec work's a topic for a whole 'nother time, but spec work is and does really help a career move forward. I started my career shooting spec work, pretty much every single day while I lived on a bicycle, then in a car, then in a van, then, like, a fancy, like, van life van. But, yeah, so, like, find companies that allow spec work to be submitted, and go out and shoot a spec project and then deliver and pitch on that. Often that pitches like that actually land in terms of, like, you getting noticed and the brand's responding. I found, like, it's a really high response rate if you shoot a specific, spec project to them. But the thing I will say is don't lose the love for what you're doing because you're just shooting spec work. And so I would say overall, kind of the biggest takeaways of this is like if you build out a client roster, stick with it and keep pitching them. Figure out a cadence that works for you. Figure out a list size that works for you. and then set the cadence for how often you reach out. Um, I think to every 2 to 3 weeks is kind of the best cadence, and those are, like, personalized messages, to a certain extent. It's like 1 line of personalization, like, kind of like a paragraph of non-personalization, and then 1 line again of personalization, kinda done, and, just keep going at it. I'd say, do nothing shorter than 6 months, but at 18 months, you can kinda cut your loss with that if you've never gotten a response. And then in terms of kinda, like, some things to think about, um, to kinda ask yourself of like, "Hey," um, "is this actually working or is this not working?" So I think some questions that I ask myself is like, "What is the longest, I've ever sustained outreach to a single brand, and, what made it so you stopped?" I kinda think, like, after 3 years of reaching out, like, I'd be done. 18 months is, like, what I would stay at, like, no less than 18 months. How do you, currently distinguish between silence that means no and silence that means not yet? I think the silence that means not yet is, way more like a no, they usually just tell you no, like, "Hey, no, we have somebody in-house," while silence that's like a not yet is, kinda just it's more of like, "Hey, thanks for your pitch. We don't have a photographer right now," or, "We don't need a shoot right now," or something like that. That's usually like a not yet. If you measured your outreach by activity rather than outcome for the Yeah, this is kind of a strange question, but so if you measured your outreach by activity rather than outcomes for the next 6 months, what would change about your approach? I don't so, I mean, as an adventure photographer, the way I read that is like kayaking, rock climbing, mountaineering, surfing. If I kind of broke it in those categories, it'd be a little bit strange, um, but you never know. I think that could work. Is there a brand you stopped pitching in the last month that you wish you stayed with? Uh, no. Um, if I stop reaching out to somebody, it's like pretty well calculated. It's like either I just haven't heard back from them. Um, Yeah. So, no, if I stop reaching out to someone, it's quite calculated. So, yeah. Alright, well, thank you, everyone, and if you watch this and we're like, "Hey, I still have more questions," drop it in the comments below, and I will answer. Peace out.